What are you making?
I'm mixing up a stew to give corporate a different view. Have a taste. Welcome to the Corporate Kitchen. I'm your host, Tiger, and today on the menu is consultants. I would genuinely be surprised if you go your entire career without interfacing with at least one consultant or consulting company. They are very much ingrained in corporate America, and there are many companies that use them consistently, including smaller companies, even if it's a one time use. They, being consultants, really are supposed to drive answering a need for a company. I've interfaced with consultants multiple times in the companies that I worked for. It's just natural, it's normal. And at the end of the day, you may become one of them. So without further ado, let's dive right into the kitchen with this. According to the Merriam-Webster, the definition of consultant as a noun is one who consults another; two, one who gives professional advice or services; expert. We're talking definition number two here, and I'm so happy to see the words or services. When we think of consultants, a lot of people immediately go to the advice portion where they are seeking some type of guidance to solve a problem or answer a riddle that the company may have. It is also very true that there are consultant agencies out there that provide services, whether it's tax preparation services, whether it's training, whether it's marketing material. The consultant world is more than just giving advice. Sometimes you are actually paying to receive something other than just words in a presentation, but an actual tangible item that you can now use in your company. That's going to bring us straight into our first takeaway. And this is Tiger's opinion here, but consultants should be secondary to your organization. When you're seeking a consultation, you're reaching outside, external to the organization, and pulling in information that currently either doesn't exist or needs professional interference to get accomplished. Many large corporations have the capabilities internally, has the expertise internally to address the needs and requirements that are sought out with consultants. If you talk to tenured people who have worked at large corporations and dealt with consultants that have done work or services within the company that they worked, you might hear some negativity there. And it's kind of warranted on some parts because there are many times in which companies will use will use consultants before exhausting the resources they have internally. Depending on the industry, some are more open to receiving consultation than others. Regardless, the takeaway is it should be secondary to your organization. When there are problems that arise within a company, the company should be using its paid resources to address. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. There are a lot of reasons that a company may choose to use a consultation agency. However, you as the employee, if you know that a problem has arisen, tackle it and make it known that you are going to try to tackle it and get ahead of some of the decision making or the decisions that have to be made in regards to seeking external help. You work at that company and you, although have a bias to it, you know it best and you're probably the right person to ask of how to address it. This doesn't always happen. So when you're early in your career in corporate America, and these quote unquote experts from outside the company are brought in to tell you how to run your company, it may make you feel some type of way. You have to be careful of that because perspective is a good thing sometimes. But in regards to consultation, it should come secondary. It should be more so I looked at the organization, I looked at all the resources I have, tried to fix the problem. We weren't able to do that. So now I'm going to seek resources beyond, which is external. This means that consultants do not belong everywhere. They're like ketchup. Ketchup. Ketchup does not belong on everything. Some stuff it makes complete sense for. French fries definitely makes sense. Chicken nuggets, sure. There are things that that ketchup really, really, really makes sense for, no matter the area that it's made or how it's made. Obviously, like if we're talking French fries and you're making poutine, that's not the same thing as just making French fries. So you're asking and making something different. Sure, ketchup doesn't belong in there, but a base French fry, we can call the French fry training. Do you reach out to consultants to take care of your training? Absolutely. Absolutely. Why not? A lot of the specialized training that the employees of your company needs to have strengthen competencies and different skill sets to be successful, why not reach out to consultants? There's plenty of people that had a whole career and they made a secondary career or their second career with a consultant agency that provides training to companies. Absolutely do that. Absolutely seek that. When you are going to do your taxes every year, you may consult with a tax expert. When you go to do your finance, you may consult with a finance expert. Consultations are a good thing. You hear that word a lot, consultations. And if you're going to do that, you're getting a consultant, an expert, right? The second definition consultant is expert. So we can use those words interchangeably. You're getting an expert to provide you professional advice so that you can make sound decisions. Similarly to ketchup, you are using ketchup in order to provide enhancement to what you're eating. But both in the food analogy and in the professional world, at the end of the day, it's your decision. Your decision is critical, or a decision. Sometimes it's out of your hands when leadership makes a decision. A decision has to be made. When you think of a consultation, you're receiving information, and now you can decide what you want to do with that information. You're using ketchup. You know what ketchup tastes like. You know how the food's going to taste if you use it, and then you can make that decision. But it doesn't go for everything. It doesn't go. And also, in regard to making decision, you have to be able to trust your own judgment. What do I mean by that? Some consultations aren't free. So if you are going to take the risk of paying for professional advice, you kind of want to know what you're anticipating of whether you truly are going to receive the information you need, because you don't know it internally and you have to get the external advice and guidance to make a sound decision. Same thing with the ketchup. Before you put it on something, you have to determine if it's going to taste good, if it's going to taste better. Then once you commit, once you make the decision, you're there. I mean, you could ruin a whole dish if you put ketchup on it and it doesn't taste good. Just like you could waste money if you pay for a consultation and the consultation's not good. It's just a risk. But we know instinctively that it's not necessary for everything. If you are a doctor, you may not need a consultation on something within your field. If you're an engineer, you may have a gut feeling and may not need the consultation of a decision to make. So you may not necessarily have to take that risk. Just like when you are eating a dish, you will know some of the foods that's like, ketchup is not the right move here. I need to transition to something else. I'm having a steak. I'm not putting ketchup on my steak. Like, absolutely don't know that. Baked potato. Not putting ketchup. Well, I don't put ketchup on a baked potato. You may, but we don't put ketchup on a baked potato. So instinctively, you know But here's let's take that one step further, right? Here's the kicker point to that. The more tenure you have, the stronger your instincts become. When we think of ketchup, who uses the most amount of ketchup? Kids. Kids use the most amount of ketchup because they don't really know better. They haven't had the palette of taste really evolve to truly appreciate a lot of different flavors. And some just might be due to its spice level, might due to its bitterness, right? The kid hasn't developed to be able to accept all those different flavors. So, ketchup is the most mainstream thing to use. There are a lot of adults who like ketchup, but the majority are kids, people that are lower tenured in life. That kind of holds true with consultation impact in corporate, where people who are lower tenured, if you're just entering corporate America, the impact of a consultation will be larger than those people who have been in the field for 40 years. If you're new, if you've been in your company for less than 5 years, go seek out someone who's been in the company for more than 20 or 25. Ask that person if the company has ever sought consultation and what they thought. 9 times out of 10, it's not super positive feedback. And the reasoning for that is because that person has so much experience that they instinctively know what the issue is and how to address it. And they didn't see the value in the external consultation because they knew they have the experience. They're not green, they're not young. They knew. So the first takeaway is we really should be looking in our company first, and consultants should be secondary to the organization. With consultation, too, there's usually a framework applied. When companies get bigger, it is a lot easier to go with a framework to address many large company issues instead of personalized solutions. That framework is thoroughly deployed by large consultant companies. You can call them the big three, the big four. The personalized solutions you get more intimately with the smaller consultant firms, but the larger, they have a framework. They have a framework. There's a couple of agencies that wrote books about their framework. They have a way about their thought process and a methodology of how they address the issues that they face. Again, the weakness of that is that you don't get as big of personalized solutions when you go from company to company. It's personalized in the sense of it's that company specific issue that they're addressing, but it's not going to be thoroughly unique to that company. It's just going to be you have this company A has this issue. We applied our company's framework, and now here's your solution spat out. With that line of thinking, again, tenured people are going to be like, yeah, I could have thought of that for you. A great example of this, it's a legit thing, and it was very thoroughly done and presented. But in the simplest of form, there was a consultation done for the city of New York on if the word that they use is containerization, but in simple forms. Do trash cans work for trash? And I'm very, very, very simplifying that. But they did a containerization study to understand how trash cans would or would not work for the city of New York. You ask anyone, and people are going to instantly tell you, yeah, trash cans work. You could take care of your trash with that. But there's a lot more that goes into it. And the output file that the consultation created really thoroughly went over that and went into a lot of detail about it. But not everyone's reading those details. Not everyone is really getting into the weeds like that. They just see big picture. This is what they're asking. This is the result that they gave. That's kind of a no brainer, guys. And when you think on a larger macroeconomic level like that, in terms of just trying to simplify it to a big ticket level, you realize something. Bigger doesn't necessarily mean better. And that's our takeaway. Second takeaway. Bigger doesn't necessarily mean better. Unpopular opinion. The state of Pennsylvania might be upset at this. Heinz makes great ketchup, and they're the biggest ketchup producer in the world. But it doesn't necessarily mean they make the best ketchup, right? There are people who make their own ketchup, and if you do that, kudos to you. You're great. But there are other brands that if you start to taste, you're like, wow, okay, they make it different. I mean, in fairness, in America, we use high fructose corn syrup to sweeten a lot of our stuff. If you taste a ketchup that doesn't have it, it may taste totally foreign to you, or you may totally love it if you didn't grow up on that. It could be a shock to taste ketchup that actually has it. But the underlying theme here is that just because it's a bigger company doesn't mean you get better services. This is why I started the conversation out with the framework of a lot of the bigger agencies have a specific framework that they deploy, and it provides you a lot of good information until you step back and you're like, oh, well, you answered our problem with a very logical and no-brainer answer that I could have gave. The difference is through your framework, you were able to give all the details and provide a lot more information to give the company a better sense of confidence in making a decision regarding said problem. But you could have got that internally. You probably could have got that internally, or at least not to the full extent, but enough information to be able to make the decision. When you get to certain things for your personal life, like tax preparation services, I mean, there are big companies that you can consult with to do your taxes. Who do other people use? They use their CPA. They use their people. And their smaller company or single individual, sole proprietor person does not necessarily mean that they're worse than the bigger companies. Just because the consulting company is bigger doesn't mean they're all necessarily better than everyone else. They do a lot of great work. They do improve a lot of companies. But then they also have the other side too, where sometimes everything doesn't pan out. You can easily Google search a lot of these companies and see some of the negative situations that have occurred with the activity that they've done. One of the examples of services that we talked about was training. Do you need to go to a large company for training? No, you probably want to go to someone that is more centered around the expertise that you need and really will provide the services that you need for the company. The larger the corporation you have, the more diluted in expertise you may get. The large consultant agencies have a lot of younger people and more tenured people. You may come into a situation where you're joining a company, you're less than 5 years there, and they hire an external consultation. They come in, and despite you being less than 5 years in the company and in your corporate America career, they bring in someone that has less experience than you. And now they're going to give you consultation on an issue that you have in the company. And it's almost like a head tilt moment where you're like, wow, what? But again, larger companies have frameworks. So it's not necessarily going to mean that they are better than you, but they have a framework that they can use to execute your problem through their mythology and come up with a solution. You just don't have access to that. You don't have the ability. And it does not make them better than you. It just makes it different. And you have to accept that. Don't lose hope though, because one thing holds true. At some point, you're going to be the consultant. And that's our third takeaway. At some point, you eventually become the expert. When you walk into corporate America, obviously you're going to be considered green. No one is going to necessarily consult you on matters of corporate America processes. However, that doesn't mean that you don't walk into corporate America without any expertise. If you went to school in order to get your job, there's some background stuff that you may be good at. Software engineers are a great example. They have some level of expertise in coding, so they may be able to give consultation on new stuff, but not necessarily the trusted instinctual expert that people would rely on heavily before receiving external consultation, right? So think about that, right? Are you so good at it that I don't have to seek someone else for it? If the answer is yes, then you're heading to the land of experts. If the answer is no, then they're going to have to ask someone else. You will know when you reach that because you won't answer the question. It would just happen. If you answered the question, if you said, yeah, I know that I have that much expertise in this area, you failed. Yeah, you're actually in the no category because if you do have the expertise where you know that you have entered consultation is when they seek you. You may see this a lot of times in non corporate America competencies when you first come into the corporate world. It may be you helping some of the more tenured people with current technology. How do you do this? How do you do that? You're always on your phone. I figure you know how to use technology. You're an expert there. How do you work some of these features? How do you turn on, turn off? That's where you really start your expertise there with some of the stuff that you learn. But it really doesn't come in until later. You got to have some years of experience under your belt. You have to spend some time at a company or in a function so that not only do you build a pillar of your Rolodex, but that pillar is built high and high and high and high. When you have more ketchup than French fry, you really, really, really want to build it as high as possible because if you're just a dab of ketchup, they bring you the bottle and they give you just a little dab, little cup of ketchup, and you have all these fries. It's like, not really worth it. But then they bring you a whole bottle. It's completely full, hasn't been opened. It's like, wow, I trust this. I don't have to ask questions. I don't have to ask for more ketchup. I know that this will be enough. When you know that you have enough or even more than that's needed in the expertise, people are just going to start coming to you. They're going to start asking you questions and you're going to be the expert. And you will get that as you get more experience in corporate America. So, my advice to you is if you're not going to go down the entrepreneur route, which you can absolutely be an entrepreneur if you so desire, but if you're going to do a career in corporate America, make sure you're actually building an expertise in something. You know, jack of all trades, expert of none is a common phrase that you hear of people that switch groups, switch areas, switch functions a lot and doesn't stay a significant amount of time to be able to retain some of the knowledge of that function that you would really learn after an extended period of time. And that's okay. I'm not saying that you can't be the jack of all trades. If you go that route and you become multifunctionally disciplined, make sure there are some competencies or something that you are building upon that you can be an expert on. Yeah, you may go through a lot of different functional groups in corporate America. So you hit engineering, you hit programs, you hit operations, you hit supply chain, you hit quality. But in all those functions, you were a manager. So your expertise may be in managing people. See what I did there? You don't have to necessarily focus on a subject like math or engineering or science or legal to be able to become an expert. Sometimes it's also in competencies. It could be in soft skills that you're an expert on. And again, people will know when you're good at it and when you're not. Let me give you a great example of this. Public speaking. If you are early in your career, pay really good attention to your company's all hands meetings and your functional meetings in which a leader or executive is presenting to a large mass group. Pay attention to their public speaking and see how well they are. Some people, amazing. Other people, you're going to be like, oh, you should probably consult some experts. For those people that you feel they should probably consult help, would you trust their advice to help you on your public speaking? See? You see what happens there? You see how it's instinctual? If you are really good, you would just know. You would just know. People who do TED Talks, you see their public speaking, you see their ability to talk amongst a mass group of people, and then you're influenced by that. It will influence you to reach out, or it will influence you to react positively to what's being said. That response and that influence shows that they're an expert in what they're doing. If you go straight into, oh, that was a waste of my time, or you can't even finish it, or you immediately are criticizing what came out, something obviously didn't go well, and maybe they're not the expert at the area that you were seeking or that you were listening to. At some point, you're going to fill those shoes. You don't go through a 30, 40-year career and become an expert at nothing. There are some people that are experts at doing nothing that have made a career at doing bare minimum, but have somehow skated through every layoff, skated through every merger, acquisition, and never changed jobs and are still in that single position and held it forever. That is an expertise that I still to this day do not understand, but nor do I want to become. Some people are just like that. Yours is going to be different, and it's not going to be the same as everyone else's, and that's okay. That's okay. You're not as great as the Heinz ketchup. Okay, that's okay. Remember, we said bigger doesn't necessarily mean better. It's okay. Maybe you're Whole Foods 365 ketchup. Maybe you're Hunt's. You can be different. The point is, when you eventually become an expert, you will know because people will reach out to you. And then give yourself a pat on the back because look at you. You are the consultant now. So as we wrap up, let's go over our takeaways again. Number one, it should be it being consultations. Consultants should be secondary to your organization. You have an organization for a reason. Companies should invest in their talent. Two, bigger doesn't necessarily mean better. Usually as you get bigger, there's a framework that's applied that spits out a solution. Again, regardless of all the books that you read, you may not be able to replicate that framework, and that's okay. But doesn't mean that you need to replicate it. It's okay. Be your own person, because that person, as we talked about in our last takeaway, is going to be an expert eventually. And then you will be a consultant. And when you do, let me know how much you charge. I may need your services. And with that, we'll turn off this stove, take off the thinking apron, and let's just say the dishes will get done later. This topic wasn't a big mess, but if we learned something today, then we know there's a little cleaning up to do. I do want to talk this topic more, maybe trade stories about this soon, like this Thursday soon. I hope to see you there. Thanks for being in the corporate kitchen today. I'm your host, Tiger. Until next time.